Hello BookTube, my name is Kate and this is my channel Chapter Kate. Today I'm going to be talking about why I do not like to rate books. I hate giving books star ratings, to be honest. If you've paid any amount of attention to my rating of books, you'll see that there's a lot of 5 stars, a lot of 4 stars, a couple of 3 stars, barely ever any 1s or 2 stars. I'm generally pretty generous with my stars, and that's for several reasons, and I'll get into those. I've heard some people talk about readers as being one of 2 types. They either rate critically or they rate based on their enjoyment. And they talked about people who read critically as being people who read more sort of intellectually, and people who read for the fun of it don't really think about that kind of stuff. Personally, I believe that everybody reads because they enjoy reading, not because of some other thing, unless you're in school and you're being forced to read something, which generally kills a lot of people's joy for reading. But for this video, I'm going to be talking about 3 different sort of types of book reviewers, as well as the type of book reviewer that I am. Type number 1 is the feel-good booktuber. This is the booktuber who rates based on their enjoyment level alone. If they enjoyed the book, they give it a high rating. And that's it. Doesn't mean that they're less intellectual with their reading, it just means that they don't really care that much about rating it based on literary techniques or writing style. Then we have what has been sort of called the critical reader on BookTube, and this is the reviewer who is essentially grading a book as they read it. These readers typically look for things that could have been done better, things that were problematic, techniques that could have had a better delivery, as well as their enjoyment level. Their enjoyment level sometimes influences their perception of these things, and they may go easier or harder based on their enjoyment level. But essentially they are kind of looking to grade the novel. And then the third type of reader is the type of reader that I consider myself to be, and this is an analytical reader. I don't read so much to look for faults in the book. And if something irks me, that doesn't like take points off, if that makes sense. I'm not looking to grade a book. And personally, I feel like a star rating is overly simplistic to the way that I sort of look at books and read books. Now, I'm going to jump topics for just a moment, but it's connected, I promise. So bear with me. My degree is in music therapy, and in my degree, we are very focused on evidence-based practice. So we read a lot of research articles. And generally, when you're reading research articles, there's 2 types. There's qualitative research and quantitative research. Quantitative research generally deals a lot in numbers. So for music therapy, if I was working with a patient who has a hard time walking, and I was measuring how effective it was to play music while they were walking. I might use time, I might use steps taken, I might use the number of times that they reached out to the wall for balance. I'll use these various numbers to sort of measure my effectiveness. And that would be a quantitative study because I'm using numbers. And then there's qualitative. And this might be more like how I interpret a patient's mood and how my music affects their moods. And I would sort of communicate this in a research article through descriptive language. So if you can picture those 2 different things, quantitative is numbers, qualitative is more description. And so when I read, I don't think in numbers at all. I don't think, oh, I'm going to take that away, I'm going to take a point away here, a point away there. Oh, they repeated a word really soon and it was a weird word, so it's kind of weird that they repeated it. These things I think about, but I don't take points off so much when I am reading. Instead, I look more for messages in books. I look for symbolism. I look for sort of the general purpose of things. I study the book as I'm reading it, and I'm not studying the techniques used so much as I'm studying sort of the messages that are trying to be communicated. Because personally, I don't feel like I'm in a place where I can grade writing style, but I have taken courses where I looked for meanings and things. Primarily, these meanings have been through poetry and through songs. However, I have sort of translated that into my reading of books as well. So if you would, I would really love you to comment below. Are you a person who rates based on your enjoyment level? Or are you a person that rates based on the author's delivery and the author's techniques, like critically? Or are you a person who likes to be more analytical with it? I will say I don't think there's anything wrong with any of these reading styles. I don't believe one to be more intellectual than the other. Everyone thinks differently and everyone perceives the world differently. And the way that I perceive the world is I like to study it. I'd like to try and find symbolism and meaning in everything. And that's just kind of how I've always been. Sometimes I find meaning in things and that meaning was never really there. It's just my personal perception of something. So, please tell me what kind of rater you are. How do you rate books? Because typically for me, my star ratings don't really mean that much. Yeah, if I enjoy the book, it's going to be a 5-star. If there's a lot of things that I have a problem with, it might be 1 or 2. But I don't really have a system for those numbers so much. I don't think about those numbers when I read. I just think about sort of the meanings. So, that's all. Am I gonna shout out today? Ooh, yeah. And now it's time for a booktuber spotlight. Today's booktuber spotlight is going to be Amy from Amy Gets Lit. Amy does podcast style videos, so they are not visual, it's just sound, and I really enjoy listening to them in the car, to be honest, because I listen to most of my booktube videos in the car. Amy is really open about being neurodiverse and having autism, and she has incorporated some of that information into some of her videos as well. Amy's also just a really delightful person and awesome to get to know. I'm really happy to have sort of gotten to know her over the past couple of months. I think it's been like 2.5 months maybe, I don't know. But you should definitely check her channel out if you really enjoy those podcast style sort of videos that are very descriptive and very informative. But that's all for this video. If you would like more of this junk, subscribe below. Bye! Tripping over shadows and I'm drowning in the night. I feel the soldiers coming and I'm putting up a fight. I feel my eyelids closing under the wind.